Today I want to tell you guys about the Han Solo of dairy farmers. But first, release the Kraken! This duck B-roll sequence for you guys was brought to you by my buddy Photo Finn. Be sure to check out his channel down below. He's a kid who lives in our area who is just doing some awesome videos, so feel free to show him some love. I wish my act was that together when I was 14. Let's go see how many eggs we have this morning. Not bad, that's 6 eggs right here. Probably gonna have to start bringing the basket out. Plus, I noticed that one of the injured ducks also laid an egg. This is definitely not enough to start getting back into the egg business, but I might start trying to hatch again. Now get ready to watch this, because it'll blow your mind. Yep, the water is flowing again. This was primarily where I was getting all the water from my ducks. It has this frost-free hydrant design, but it died in the middle of the winter. I didn't know why. I couldn't tell if the hydrant broke, if something had frozen, what was going on. I went on this fruitless quest to try to find the source of the spring so I could turn it off and try to change the hydrant. That didn't work. It turns out all it needed was to defrost. So apparently what had happened was the water was freezing somewhere along here on the pipe. Each day I would run it, it would work properly, but it would add just a little bit more ice along the edge of the tube. And eventually, after a month or two of trying to use this in the middle of winter, it just froze solid, especially because we had this one period of time where it didn't get over the freezing point for easily 45 days. And a lot of times it was like at -20 or -30 at night. So it spent so much time being so cold that it actually did still freeze. I know this is a problem I'm gonna have to deal with this summer and find a better solution so I don't get caught without water like what happened this past year. But now as things are warming up and we're in the spring, living's easy. I just can't rest on that knowledge for too long because as we say in the north,
winter is coming.
Puddle ducks, what are you doing? You're living out back again. Why are you trying to come back into here? You think it's your home now? So the other day I moved the puddle ducks back with the khaki Campbells because the khaki Campbells have healed up enough and the pekin or the puddle ducks are the ones who were a little bit too aggressive. Now the khaki Campbells can kind of hold their own, so I mixed them together. And I actually took the 2 khaki Campbells that were most injured and I've moved them out into the hospital cart. One of the ducks has a really bad problem with their neck. I'm not sure if it's ever gonna heal right. The other one has a case of bumblefoot. The bumblefoot one needs medical attention. Easy girl, easy. Shh. Ducks don't like medical care. The neck problem one needs sort of less space from the other ducks so that she can feed because she can't even eat properly. It kind of looks weird when she tries to eat. So this is my attempt to try to heal those 2 ducks up. But meanwhile, I've got these 2 guys that I gotta get back there. What are you doing? Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on, you 2 jabronis. Let's go. Come on. Back to the duck place. You 2 are still not adjusting to getting back into Gen Pop. You like swimming in the pond, huh? I'm I'm really excited that the geese are showing up here on the farm next week. We're supposed to have 50 goslings arrive through postage. You know, they're gonna be freshly hatched, just ready to go, start life here on the farm. I'm excited about it because it's gonna be sort of a new business venture for us in our farm where we're starting to sell geese for meat. So if anyone wants a Christmas goose, hit me up. And while I'm really excited that this is gonna happen, one of the things I'm trying to work out logistically is find a place to butcher the geese. As we did our duck harvest last year, we butchered them ourselves. You know, I got a couple of friends to help out and we were able to do it, and I'm glad I went through that experience. But I also know it's not what I want to do for 50 geese. Just the work, the effort, trying to pluck them clean so they have a nice clean carcass, all of that stuff, that's gonna be just past my abilities. And on top of it all, there's some rules and regulations that make it more complicated. So here in Vermont, you're allowed to sell a bird that you've harvested on your farm as a farmer up to a limit. I think it's like 1,000. You have a very specific limit that you can have, and the thing is you have to sell it either at a farmer's market or through your farm. Now the way meat regulations work in the United States, there's a state system where you can go to a state inspected facility, a state approved facility, have the bird butchered, and then it can be sold within that state. But if you want to cross state lines, you've got to find something that's known as USDA inspected, and that's where it's inspected at a federal level. That's where it can cross state lines and be sold more broadly. And look, this is just how the meat industry works. I mean, I could get into all of the regulations and how they drive me crazy and that it doesn't really make much difference, but that's not my point here. So I'm looking for a USDA inspected facility. That's the point I'm trying to make here, because as I'm looking at selling my geese, I'm finding a number of different opportunities across state lines. Like I found this awesome butcher who wants to work with me, but they're in Massachusetts and they can only take meat that comes from a USDA inspected facility. You know, a lot of you guys have actually inquired about buying geese, and if I want to be able to ship them across state lines, I know that they have to be processed at a USDA inspected facility. But apparently that's much easier said than done, because most of the USDA inspected facilities that I'm finding that process poultry don't do waterfowl, and in particular they don't do geese. Most of them will do chickens and most of them will do turkeys, but they don't want waterfowl. So I am searching across New England trying to find a USDA inspected facility to process my geese when the time comes. But I will admit, there's a tiny little part of me that toys with the idea of, well, do I really have to follow their regulations and rules? Can't I sort of just fly under the radar and skirt the system?
I don't know. Fly casual.
Could I get away with that? It actually brings to mind this guy that I know who is a dairy farmer here in Vermont. He's not a dairy farmer here in Peacham. He's not even a dairy farmer here in Caledonia County, but he's up in my area. And here where we live, we're only about 50 miles south of the border from Canada. So, you know, going up to Quebec is like no big deal. It's actually quicker to get to Quebec than it is to get to Burlington from where I live. And so this dairy farmer I know, he's kind of a roguish fellow, and he has very little appetite or taste for rules and regulations. So what he does is his wife actually makes cheese on their small farm, and then they sneak it over the border into Quebec. So yes, this guy is the Han Solo of dairy farmers. Yahoo! Apparently the rules and regulations in Canada are very strict, and there's a quota system that really stands up pricing for farmers. So the price for milk and the price for cheese is actually significantly higher in Canada than it is in the United States. So the idea is for a farmer like Han Solo over there, he's got a method for quietly sneaking it over the border. I'm not gonna blow up his thing and say what it is, but he's bringing it into Quebec, and I think it ends up ultimately going to Montreal, and it's a high-end cheese that they can sell at a much lower price than imported high-end cheese because it doesn't have all the tariffs and all that sort of junk. And so he's found this good, I don't know, black market, maybe call it a gray market for his product. But apparently this is a much larger problem than I ever realized, because as I did a little bit of internet research, people at a scale much larger than my friend have been busted by Canadian officials for smuggling cheese into Canada.
Police allege cases of American cheese were smuggled across the border and sold to restaurants. Most pizza shop owners say next to labor, cheese is one of the biggest expenses.
Look, I'm not saying that this is okay. I'm not saying I condone this in the least bit. I'm not saying any of these things. I'm just saying it's kind of interesting that this guy is able to do something like this. It's interesting, right? I mean, let's hash it out in the comments if you agree or disagree. But by the way, I know if I was a Canadian farmer, I wouldn't find this anecdote nearly as amusing as I do. But I guess what I'm saying is I do find it a bit fascinating that this guy does this and is skirting international trade laws, and he is smuggling cheese to a foreign country, and it's very profitable for him. And so that is why he is the Han Solo of dairy farmers.